Welcome, everyone. My name is Carol Guess. I serve as the interim chair for the Greater Houston. I'm sorry, I'm not the interim chair. I combined my old title and my new title. That lets you know how long I've been around the chamber. But I'm currently serving as interim president for the Greater Houston Black Chamber of Commerce. I recently served as the chair. I'm the immediate past chair. But at any rate, we're all chamber family. So welcome to our chamber chat today. Very, very glad that you could join us. And thank you for your membership. Your membership is what assists us in being able to bring you webinars such as this one. And we hope that today you'll become very informed about the disaster resources that are available through FEMA and also the SBA. As you know, we're coming out of the winter storm. There are still businesses and families out there that are struggling with regard to recovery efforts. And so today we're going to just ask a few questions. And towards the end of today's event, you'll have the opportunity to ask a few questions as well. Please post your questions in the chat and we'll read them to our panelists and get some answers for you. So just to get us started, I'd like to allow our panelists who are with us to do a brief introduction of themselves and what they do with their respective agencies. And we're also expecting Congresswoman Lee to join us in a little bit. So Ben, let's start with you.
Thank you for that introduction. My name is Ben Akers. I work in congressional affairs for the Federal Emergency Management Agency, currently deployed to the Texas Winter Weather Event out of Austin. On February 9th, President Biden approved a major disaster declaration for this emergency, which authorized FEMA to provide direct federal individual assistance to residents living in 126 counties across the state, including Harris County. And what that means is that individuals in those counties whose homes were damaged as a result of the storm and who received uninsured or underinsured damages can apply for direct federal assistance from FEMA. Please note that FEMA's Individual Assistance Program does not provide grant assistance to business owners. We work closely with the U.S. Small Business Association, who is on this call today, to ensure that business owners are considered for disaster assistance loans. Since February 19th, more than $95.3 million in assistance has been provided to residents of the state of Texas, with over $32.7 million to residents in Harris County directly. FEMA has been able to provide assistance for temporary lodging expenses during the incident period, certain home repairs for costs associated with burst pipes, damage to electrical and ventilation systems, major appliances, and more. It is important to note that FEMA does not provide funding for utility bills as a result of energy spikes, as we saw during this disaster, nor can FEMA provide reimbursement for food loss due to power failure. But we are working very closely with federal, state, and local agencies, as well as our nonprofit partners, to ensure that unmet needs are addressed across the state and that no disaster survivor is left behind. Please remember that FEMA is not a substitute for insurance and cannot pay for all losses covered by a disaster, caused by a disaster, excuse me. FEMA's programs are not designed to make you whole, but rather return a survivor's home to a safe, sanitary, and functional condition. By law, we cannot duplicate benefits paid out by insurance. We do recommend that all residents whose homes are insured first file a claim with their insurance company before applying with FEMA. If you do apply with your insurance company and you have uninsured or unmet needs, we encourage you to apply for FEMA disaster assistance at www.disasterassistance.gov, which is available 24/7, or by calling the 1-800 number at 1-800-621-3362. And this number is currently available from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily. I have a bunch of additional information that I can share with you, but I'll wait for the Q&A section and hope I can get those questions answered. So thank you again, Carol, for having me here today.
Well, thank you so much, Ben, for giving us that information. And I would like to let our participants know that we will be discussing personal and business, how you were affected personally and through your business. So feel free, if you have those questions, to enter. If you have any personal questions, feel free to enter those in the chat, as well as any questions you may have concerning your business. And so now I'd like to introduce Tim Jeffcoat from the SBA. Tim, would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hello, everybody, and thank you, Carol, for inviting us to be here. So I run the local Small Business Administration office, not too far from Carol on Gessner and 59. So we are responsible for 32 counties of Southeast Texas, and our jobs are to help the small businesses in that area start and grow and prosper. So if you've got a small business or thinking of a small business, then we want to know about you, and we're delighted to help you. I know we're here today to talk about disaster. My office is frequently involved in disasters, even though that is actually a separate part of the SBA called, ironically, the Office of Disaster Assistance. But we work with them very, very closely. So whether it's working on the disaster of the economic disaster of the pandemic, or working on physical disasters like the freeze that we recently had, several folks in my office that are really well versed to help out with this.
Thank you so much, Tim. So we have two people on today that have a wealth of information. We're looking forward to hearing from the Congresswoman as well. And so we'll get right into a few of the questions that we have for both Tim and Ben. So this is a question for both of you, and would like for you to speak to this from a personal perspective as well as a business perspective. What are the first steps that a homeowner or a business owner should take after a natural disaster strikes? Should they contact, and then we heard Ben say they should contact their insurance before they contact FEMA. But if you all could elaborate a little bit more, because I know that you have experience with panicked people. You know, something has happened, their windows are blown out, or something is frozen over. So if you could just elaborate a little bit on that and speak about some of your experiences in those areas.
Ben, you may want to go first, since after insurance, you're usually the first guy.
Sure. So certainly, as you mentioned, Carol, we want to ensure that disaster survivors are in a safe place before they start working on disaster recovery. Once they're in a safe place, they're able to assess the damages to their home or rental property. We want to ensure that documentation is made of the damages. If you can take photographs, that'll be very helpful for the FEMA individual assistance team and your insurance provider down the line when reviewing your damages. We do recommend you reach out to your insurance agency first. If you haven't received a settlement from your insurance company, you can provide us with the claim number and we will help track that settlement as it comes through and use that settlement information to determine whether or not you are eligible for FEMA individual assistance. And as I mentioned, we've seen payouts to individuals for this disaster for damages to burst pipes, personal property loss, medical needs related to the disaster, and a number of other unmet needs. So once you've applied with your insurance company and worked with FEMA to see if there are unmet needs that can be addressed by the agency, we then, if need be, will refer individuals to the SBA, and I can let Tim step in and explain that process.
Yeah, so you can look at, talk to your insurance company. If necessary, then you talk to FEMA. And then it's kind of like FEMA gives you a ticket to talk to the SBA. So they refer you to us at that point. And then we're ready to chat with you about whether we can help. When there is a disaster in the Houston area, such as during Harvey, what happens is, along with FEMA, or sometimes on our own, we set up what are called disaster recovery centers. So this would be an office, maybe even in your neighborhood, that if you wanted to, you could go to and sit down with somebody and figure out how we can best help you. You don't have to do that, though. And particularly during a pandemic, you probably don't want to do that. Everything that we do can be handled online. So as long as you can get online and go to sba.gov, then as long as there is a declared disaster, you will be able to go there and you'll be able to fill out the requisite forms to be able to get started with any financing that would be available for your disaster.
Okay, so the main thing is we want everyone to be safe.
Absolutely.
That is the very first thing, is to be safe, be in a safe, secure area. And if you don't have to go out and you're able to utilize the internet to get assistance, do so.
And let me just add real quickly, Carol, I left out the most important part. We toll free as well. So you can just call and get somebody on the phone that can do this with you. Probably is a little more challenging, takes a little more time. But if all you can do is get a phone, no problem. You can call the SBA and we'd be able to help you.
Thank you for that, Tim. And earlier, Ben, you were talking about that FEMA really assists persons, not necessarily businesses. So if we're talking about disaster assistance, be it for the winter event that just occurred or even hurricanes that might be coming, I'm hearing that we're supposed to have an active hurricane season this year, on top of everything else. If we're talking about applying for assistance, businesses should seek SBA, and personal, if it has anything to do with personal or family, they should apply to FEMA. Would both of you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, in the event of a homeowner or renter, then you file with your insurance. If there's still something left, then you would contact FEMA. That would be the correct thing to do. If FEMA can't help you, or if they can't help you as much as you need, then they can refer over to us, and then we have some programs to help. And
Yes,
in the case of a business, generally speaking, you just go to the SBA. Sorry, Ben, I cut you off.
Thank you, Tim. Point out. No, it's okay. Sorry, my internet has been a little choppy, so I apologize if I cut you off as well. I just wanted to point out that FEMA's individual assistance program is designed to assist homeowners with their primary residence. So if you own your house and you own your house, you may be eligible for home repair assistance. But if you're a renter in a home, that doesn't mean that you're ineligible for assistance. It means that you can be considered eligible for personal property loss or lodging assistance, which means that, for example, in this event, if during the incident period you went and stayed in a hotel due to lack of electricity during the sub-freezing temperatures, you may be eligible for reimbursement for those hotel costs if your insurance company does not provide assistance with that. Many insurance companies do provide assistance with alternative living expenses, which is something that most individuals are not aware of in their policy. So we do encourage those who may not have even received physical damage to their home to reach out to their insurance company if they did stay in a hotel for a short period of time.
And speaking of that, Ben, how long does that assistance last, to be able to stay at a hotel?
So for this disaster, if your dwelling did not receive any damages, the incident period that would allow you to receive reimbursement is from the 11th to the 28th of February. But we do see continued rental assistance and continued lodging expense reimbursement paid out to individuals who have damages to their home, damages that make their home uninhabitable for a variety of reasons. So if you were not able to retain electricity, water, gas, or if there were damages to the main rooms and main components of your home for a longer period of time, you may be determined eligible for long-term rental assistance, which is something we see provided to individuals after a hurricane in most instances.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to remind our participants, if you have a question, please feel free to enter it into the chat. And when we get to the Q&A portion of our event today, we'll ask the question. Thank you. So Tim, are you finding with regard to the SBA, is there anything similar to that for business owners who have been displaced? Is there any, especially for businesses that are, renting space, for their facilities? Is there anything that SBA has, any products at all for that?
Well, here's kind of the way that works with a business. So let's say there's been a hurricane, there's been damage, and you can't occupy your business. You may need to rent somewhere else in the meantime. Maybe it's a warehouse, what have you. Well, we would probably view that, maybe not in all cases, but we'd probably view that as a necessary operational expense for your business to continue operating, in which case it would be okay. But kind of like Ben said earlier, the point of the disaster funding is not to improve the situation, but is to basically make you whole so you can get back to operating your business. So while you're fixing your business, you got to do something. You got to be in operation. So for instance, renting another place on a short-term lease might be possible. In those cases, frequently what will happen is you will need to get approval from your loan officer at the SBA. As I mentioned, we have a whole other part of the SBA, the Office of Disaster Assistance, that does this, but that would be something that is typically possible.
Okay, that's and I'm sure that's great news because with the damage that some of our members sustained to their businesses, and if you're leasing, you don't necessarily have control over the building, especially when something like a natural disaster occurs. So it's good to know that there's some assistance out there, and thank you for that explanation. So,
Carol, can I
yes,
expand on that just a little bit?
absolutely,
Let's
absolutely.
say that's you, because we know we live in Houston. We live 30 miles from the Gulf, and if it's not this year, it's next year or the following year when you might get hit by terrible high-speed winds that blow out your windows or something. The thing I would really recommend you do, and I know this is probably a question you have later, and I'll have more to say, but something I'd really recommend is that you get connected now with one of the SBA resource partners here in Houston. We got about 250 people that would love to help you get ready for disasters with your business. And then if it happens to you, they're going to be there to help you get through it. And that's going to be really useful to you because you've had experienced a disaster. You may feel frantic about being able to get back to business and taking care of your customers and doing the things that you do. But it might be really important that there's a couple of things you do before you get back to business so you don't wind up compromising your disaster loan or something like that. It's a lot for somebody to handle. Your expertise might be, baking things. Your expertise might not be dealing with insurance companies and dealing with the federal. But the Small Business Development Center or SCORE or the Women's Business Center that we work with directly, they know how to do that. So I can provide some information on that later, but I really would encourage everybody here to make sure you've got either an SBDC advisor or a WBC advisor or a SCORE mentor in your pocket that you can turn to if a disaster occurs, and they will be there to help you.
Absolutely. One of the best things that we can do is get prepared. And yeah, a little bit later, we'll talk about that in greater detail. And, another pressing issue that I've heard from our members and some of the members of the business community is, when do I have to pay this money back? Especially when, you're out of your space, you're not able to, sell your product or your services because you're trying to clean up or trying to get back into the groove of things. So could you both expound on that? Is some of the money grant? Is it loan, or how does it work?
So I can cover the FEMA portion first. And for those individuals who have joined the call since the beginning, I wanted to point out that the assistance that I'm about to discuss pertains only to individuals and families, not to small business owners. But we provide individual assistance grants to disaster survivors with unmet needs that are underinsured or uninsured. And those are in the form of grants. So they don't need to be repaid at any time, at any point. But what we do recommend, Carol, is have all individuals who receive FEMA funding to document how that funding is spent. So if you can keep receipts for lodging expenses, if you can keep receipts for home repairs, that will allow you to provide FEMA with additional information should you need to appeal for more funding to reach those unmet needs, or if by chance you do at a later date receive an insurance settlement and FEMA needs to come back and ensure that there were no duplication of benefits, we can compare receipts and show that you've spent your funding from FEMA in a way that it was intended, and we can ensure that there's not a need for recoupment of funding. So I'll hand it over to Tim to discuss the SBA process, but I just wanted to point that out for FEMA.
Right. So it's very unusual that the SBA has any kind of a grant for disasters. So we do have lots of loans, and they take different nature. So it can be a loan for a homeowner, that's up to $200,000, an additional $40,000 possible for the occupants of the house. So your house and its occupants and its stuff is up to 240. If you're only renting, that's up to 40,000. And for a business, it's up to 2 million. Those are loans. There are different factors that dictate how long the loan is going to be, but it is up to 30 years. So you may, if you wind up needing extensive repairs to your home or to your business, you may be getting a 30-year term on that loan, but the goal being to make it as affordable as possible so that you can get your business back in operation and not be encumbered by some huge second mortgage hanging over your head. A really important point too is that these loans that are made to you by the federal government, we don't care when you pay them off. So, you know, oftentimes with a commercial loan you might get with a bank, if you pay it off early, there's a penalty because the bank was planning on making a certain amount of money off of the interest. With disaster loans, it doesn't matter to us. We're really delighted if you pay it off early because that means you're healthy. So there's some flexibility there.
That's good news, because, you know, with everything going on, the pandemic, and slow business, well, you know, here in Texas, we're back to 100% now. So, you know, there are business owners who are definitely happy about that, but it's certainly going to take a minute to get demand back up and to get that foot traffic in and to get back to the place where, you know, businesses were initially. So that's great. But let me ask you this, Tim, because that sounds really like almost too good to be true. So when you say that you don't care when the loan is repaid, can you break that down a little bit?
Well, we definitely care that you do pay for it. But if you wanted to, let's say you got a loan, a disaster loan on your business, and it's for 30 years. And, you know, a year from now, you're doing really, really well. You got plenty of cash. Things are doing great. You say, you know, I don't want to worry about that anymore. Pay it off. It's fine. You just call our toll-free number and you say, I want to pay it off. And they'll quote you a number and you write the check and it's done. It's pretty straightforward.
That is very straightforward. And on behalf of business owners everywhere, I'd like to say thank you for making it straightforward.
Well, no, I tend to oversimplify things sometimes too, but yeah, it is pretty straightforward.
Well, Tim, let's stay with you for just a minute, because many of our chamber members, and as you know, in our community have received PPP loans. So how do these disaster loans work in conjunction with PPP? And I'm thinking they're not in conjunction, but when you think about it as a business owner, you might say, I have a PPP loan,
right?
You know, I'm considering the disaster loan, you know, is this good, bad, you know, how will it affect me?
Okay, sure. Well, it doesn't really. So let me explain. If you have been affected by the pandemic, as many businesses have, we have special disaster loans for that. One of those is the Paycheck Protection Program loan, which you don't get from the SBA, you actually get that from a bank. And then we just stand behind that loan. You can get a PPP loan and one of the disaster loans. For the pandemic, there's a special loan directly from the SBA called the Economic Injury Loan. With the freeze, there's also an economic injury loan. It's much larger, possibly, depending on the damage that you've had. And you can certainly do all of these loans. The only limitation is the more loans you get, the less likely you are to get more loans because you're becoming more and more indebted. So until your revenue streams return to your business, it may make it challenging for you to get other financing because you've already got debt. So other than that, the fact that you're just increasing your debt levels for your business, there's no particular limitation on whether you can have one EIDL and one regular disaster damage loan and then a PPP loan, and maybe you got a disaster loan back from Harvey. I mean, there's no reason you can't have all of those if you need them. We want you to have them if you need them. But by the same token, that does affect your credit levels or your credit worthiness, your ability to repay, because now you have more debt servicing you have to do. So that's the only reason that would be a limitation.
So as far as interest rates, you know, PPP is the interest rate there. If it turns into a loan, it's very low.
1%.
So 1%. Everyone, did you hear that? 1%. 1% on the disaster loans.
Your PPP should be forgiven, but if it's not,
right,
then what if there's a balance? It's 1%. Yep.
So is that the same for disaster loans as well?
It varies. But basically the way it works at the SBA is every time there is a disaster, interest rates for that disaster are set. So this particular, I'm looking over here at another monitor, this particular freeze disaster, which we call 16876. So the 16876 disaster has very low interest rates. Here's what they are. If it's a home, your home got damaged, you had your pipes freeze and you got a bunch of damage that you got to get fixed, that's 1.25%. Now, here's the deal. Really important thing for you to know about SBA disaster loans. For each loan, there's always two interest rates. 1.25 is if you have no other choice than to get SBA's loan. If you're Carol and you're a woman of means and you can get financing anywhere you want, then we call that credit elsewhere. We say you have credit available elsewhere and you're choosing to use the disaster loan. If that's the case, Carol has to pay 2.5. 2.5 is still pretty cheap. For businesses with the freeze, it's 3%. If you are really hurting and you don't have other credit available, it's 6% if you do have credit available. Another really important thing you need to know is if you are a business and you choose you're going to get this this disaster loan anyway, you're going to be paying 6% if you have other credit available, and you might have a shorter term. So where for the person that has no other choice than to get this loan to make their business whole, we might give them longer to pay it back. If you have credit available elsewhere, we may cut. Matter of fact, what I'm reading here is if you have credit available elsewhere, the maximum you can get is a 7-year term. But if you don't have credit elsewhere, it could be longer. Mm-hmm. So there are variables. Every time there's a disaster, the interest rates change. Here, this rate of 3% which is a very good rate. With the pandemic, it's actually 3.75.
Those are very low interest rates, and we're grateful to hear that. You know, we definitely need all of the help that we can get during this time. And so wanted to ask a question, one more question for you, Tim, with regard to the loans. Now, you talked about the EIDL loan, which is the economic injury disaster loan. And then there's a traditional 7A SBA loans. Who would you say are the best candidates for either one of those loans? Okay. And would those fall into the disaster relief, or would it just be EIDL?
Yeah. So when it comes to disaster, ordinarily there are just two loans for businesses available from the SBA. That's a damage loan. That's my word for it, because your business has been damaged. For instance, your pipes froze and burst, and now you got to replace a bunch of walls and floors. Or your business has been economically damaged, which means your business is fine. It's sitting there just like it was yesterday, but your customers are all damaged. So you're not able to sell whatever it is you have to sell. Now, I'll give you I'll paint a picture for you as an example. Some few years ago, I actually worked elsewhere with SBA, and we had a really severe drought. So the marinas were perfectly fine. The drought didn't hurt the marina, but there was no lake anymore. The lake had pretty much dried up, so all the boats are sitting in the mud. So the marina could not operate. Their customers could not rent boats and buy gas and buy bait and buy tackle and all those kinds of things. So they were economically injured. So that's what is available from the SBA for disaster. Now, under normal circumstances, let's say you go through a disaster, you recover, everything's fine, and actually now you're doing so well, you're thinking about buying one of your competitors. Or you have a muffler shop and you're thinking of adding another bay on your building so you can handle more business. We have loans for that. So the SBA has got a whole suite of loans that we make available through banks, up to $5 million, up to 25-year terms, so that your business can grow. So you mentioned the 7A, that's the most common one. That's probably about 90% of the loans that normally happen in the Houston area each year. This last year was totally different because it was new to the world. I don't believe it will exist again after this pandemic is over. And last year we did, oh my God, hundreds of thousands of PPP loans.
So, okay, so I think we should be clear. Hopefully we're all clear now on the different loan products that are available through the SBA at these very low interest rates. So we'll turn now to getting ready for the future, because we know we live in an area where hurricanes are prevalent. Supposedly, we are supposed to have an active hurricane season coming upon us. So in preparation for that, one of the questions that was submitted to me is there anything that a business can do, or a family can do, Ben and Tim, with regard to getting funding in advance? Now, you may have gotten this type of question before, but knowing that we're an area that consistently has these types of issues, please let us know if there is something that a family or a business can do ahead of time in preparation for that type of disaster, being a hurricane.
Ben, I've been talking a lot. You want to go first on that?
Absolutely. So there are a number of hazard mitigation and flood mitigation programs that FEMA works on in conjunction with the state and local officials. So rather than receiving grant assistance through FEMA directly, you would apply for, say, elevation assistance for your home, or weatherization assistance for your home or business through a group grant that would be provided to the city of Houston or Harris County. So what I can do is provide Carol and Tim and Congresswoman Jackson Lee's office with a list of those resources that are available. Instead of getting into the technical details here on this call, I can send that out, and we can ensure that all the members have access to opportunities going into this hurricane season and preparing even for the next, because we know that year after year, we're going to see continued damages and losses in the Harris County area. And it's important to FEMA to be proactive about those losses and not ensure that we are only a responding agency, but that we are working ahead and mitigating against those damages.
Thank you, Ben. And I wanted to jump in again. If you have any questions, please feel free to place them in the chat and we'll get those asked. Okay, Tim.
You know, here's what we tell businesses, and I'll actually tell you a story too. There are probably 3 particular or 4 particular things that you need to do as a business. First, you need to be insured. You don't need to, drown yourself in insurance, but you need the insurance that's going to be able to get you through a disaster. Work with your insurance broker, pick what makes sense for you. That's really important. Secondly, put your records in the cloud. Let's say the worst thing happens and a hurricane comes and literally wipes your business off. There's nothing left but a concrete slab. You got to go apply for disaster assistance. Guess what? We need financial statements. We need tax returns. We need all kinds of things from you. And we love you, but when you say, I don't have any records, they all got blown away in the storm, all we can then say is, well, we can't help you. Don't let us do that. Make sure you have all your records in the cloud. It's easy to do. There's nothing difficult about it. Third, and this doesn't apply to everybody, but if you need a physical location for your business, then we would encourage you to have an alternate site in mind. Maybe you have a friend that has a warehouse on the other side of town, or maybe you have a competitor that you're friendly with, and they do their stuff in Huntsville and you do your stuff in Houston. Maybe you can work out of their place for a while. Maybe you're both in carpentry, so you can go there and co-share on their saws and their other devices with them. Have a plan for how you can physically reconstruct yourself somewhere else while you're rebuilding your business. Now, for many of us, like my office, it doesn't matter if I have an office or not, really. Don't let my bosses hear you say that. But my folks are 100% portable. I answer my calls on my laptop. I don't even need a phone. All I need is an internet connection and power and this laptop, and I can work almost as effectively as I can in the office. So if my office blew away tomorrow, it wouldn't affect us in helping you with your small business at all. Final thing, cash reserves. It's not easy for everybody, but if you can build up a cash reserve, do it. Here's my story. There's a little bitty cafe in Houston, and the lady that owns it is very motivated. She has her records in the cloud. She has appropriate insurance. She has a deal worked out. Hang on, somebody's calling me. She has a deal worked out with another restaurant that if she needed to, she can go there and use their kitchens when they're closed so that she can at least have a catering operation while her restaurant is damaged. And then finally, she made sure she had 5 digits worth of money put away so that just so happens a pandemic came along. Guess what? She was able to keep her people paid while she built some plans on how to recover and deal with the pandemic, and didn't have to worry too much about having the money to pay the bills. So she was able to go into the disaster with total confidence. She knew she was insured. She knew she had her records in the cloud. So if she had to apply for loans, and she did, that she was able to get them, and she did, and she got them very quickly because she was prepared. She had her plan for an alternate location she never had to use, thank goodness. And then she had the cash to fall back on. And her business has actually done pretty well during the pandemic. So those are the things. Oh, and the final thing, I always recommend you, anytime you see me, you'll hear me say, hook up with one of our partners. We've already paid for them. They are free to you. They are professional folks standing by, ready to help you with your business. And we've got around 250 of them here in Houston. So I mentioned the Small Business Development Center. We have 2 women's business centers. Sometimes women prefer to work with women on their business. Absolutely, we make that possible for you. And then there's the SCORE organization, which is about 165 folks that are like you. They are business owners. They've been successful. They've gotten to a point in their life when they don't have to go to work anymore. So they volunteer their time to work on you growing your business. So make sure you hook up with them because they can be there to help you get through a disaster.
Absolutely. Great information, Tim. Thank you. And you know, when we're dealing with these compounded disasters.
Good morning. Good morning.
Oh,
Good morning.
good morning, Congresswoman
morning.
Lee. It's so wonderful to hear your voice.
Good.
Great to hear from you. We know you're in session. We thank you so much for joining us this morning, Congresswoman Lee. Is there anything that you'd like to say at this point, just an opening statement with regard to your service and making sure that our area is taken care of for the winter disaster?
Well, first of all, let me thank you very much and accept the fact that we are wearing masks here in Washington because we're in a major hearing dealing with the discrimination against Asian Americans. And obviously, the very fact of this chamber indicates that unfortunately, America still discriminates, and in many instances, not only in our social life and in our life, but as it relates to our businesses. So this is a very important hearing that I'm having, but this is a very important meeting that I managed to step out just for a brief moment. I'm delighted that Tim is there, and also a FEMA representative, I hope, has been able to be there as well.
Yes.
Over the last couple of weeks, we have been hosting FEMA assistance, individual assistance outreach that have been very effective. There is also a component for businesses, and I hope whoever has been presenting has provided you with that arm, that bridge that will help you in your business. But the idea was that we worked very hard to get the area declared a national disaster, and then proceeded with members of Congress and my talking to the president and others to insist that we get what we call individual assistance, which should be discussed as well. And then, of course, Tim speaks to the provisions and support federally that we can provide through the Small Business Administration. But the biggest point I want to make, Carolyn, and thank you for your leadership, Madam CEO and President, and thank you to the outstanding chamber with its long established history. Please count on me to continue to work with you on the rebuilding of your businesses, on the rebuilding of the Texas grid. I happen to think we should join the national grid. And I also think there should be penalties and accountability for the more than neglect, because it caused the loss of lives of the state government, the PUC, and of course, ERCOT. And we are working on that federally as well. But I want to mention the American Rescue Plan. And I think also Carolyn was referring to the package that we had when we had Hurricane Harvey. That package and plan is still sort of outstanding, and that was $100 million to help small businesses. That is still an outstanding program of which we are trying to work through to make sure that it is fair, even at this point in time, some almost 4 years into Hurricane Harvey. But the American Rescue Plan does focus on the impact of COVID-19 on our small businesses. So it reinvests in the dollars of the PPP, the EIDL loans. Please look into that. I'm not sure if Tim referred that to you. That has been signed by the president. So that is absolutely in place. The expanded vaccinations. Many of you know that I've been engaged last week. 1,165 persons were vaccinated in my own concept, which is that we are more open to the idea of no pre-registration and to ensure that we're in a neighborhood where people could come, and they did come. And there were people who came that couldn't get vaccinated in any other way. We want to continue that until we get every adult in America vaccinated, even the unwilling. But I would advise you to work with SBA on the PPP, the EIDL loans. I would advise you to do so with respect to the schools in your community. For those of you with children who are trying to get children back into school, we did an enormous investment. Also, those of you entrepreneurs and other, you are getting with certain income levels, $1,400 for you and children, even those who are over 17. And you can probably wind up with as much as $10,000, including or added to that would be the child tax credit, $3,000 for children above the age of 5. If they're under 5, $3,600. So we know that this will invest in the economy. Even if you're an entrepreneur, you're an individual, you're eligible for those dollars at this point in time, or your family members are eligible. And so we encourage you to be knowledgeable about the laws that we passed. My office is available to you, as well as our local federal officials. Let me thank FEMA. Let me thank the Small Business Administration, and it is your federal government at work. Carolyn knows I never stop working, and hope that if our office can be helpful to you as you move forward to take advantage of the American Rescue Plan and take advantage of the resources that are independent of that from the SBA and the FEMA individual assistance, please let us know. You also know that your tax payments or filing has been delayed for a month, I think, to May 17th. And of course, the IRS, which most people think is not, but we expect for them to be very reasonable in this particular tax year. So Carolyn, thank you so very much for giving me the opportunity. I'm glad to have been able to facilitate these persons that are speaking, and I'm glad that you and your leadership provide this opportunity for your members and others. Thank you again.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you so much for your time today and for your help in helping us bring this information to our members and to the community. You are a treasure. Thank you, Congresswoman.
Thank you. Take care now.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So as always, Sheila Jackson Lee is a friend to the chamber, and we're very grateful for her time. As you can imagine, there are many, many things going on in Washington, D.C. at this time, and she so graciously chose to work with us to bring you this information. So please let the community know about her work, about the work of FEMA, and also the work of SBA, because we definitely need these resources in our community to help us, and they are here to help us. They're here today to provide this information to us, and they will continue to be available. So as our program comes to a close, there have been a few questions placed in chat that I wanted to, and it looks like, Tim, you may have addressed one of those, but I want to go ahead and read that question in case someone else has a question about it. Are EIDL recipients disqualified from receiving grant funding?
Yeah, I answered that backwards, so I'm not sure I helped Tawana. So 2 ways to look at it. If you receive some local grants, for instance, if you're in Fort Bend County, you want to apply for those grants that they have for small businesses that can be really beneficial to your business. But if you receive that grant, that doesn't adversely impact you for then being able to receive SBA disaster financing. But I think Tawana was asking the other way around. if you have received the EIDL loan, does that affect your ability to get the local grant? That would be up to the local organization. I'm not sure. I really don't know. I believe that, for instance, in Fort Bend, because I'm a little bit familiar with their program, that they want to know if you got a grant. They want to know if you got an EIDL loan. And the reason they want to know is if, again, I don't know, and I probably shouldn't even say this, Fort Bend should answer that question. But I think it's so if they got to the point where they have to start rationing the money, they want those grants to go to the people that have no other money coming to them. So in that case, maybe it could. So really, for that area that you're in, if that's Harris County, Matagorda County, wherever you are, you would want to ask those county officials that do that grant program how they treat it in relation to you also getting EIDL financing.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for that answer. And I have another question for both Ben and Tim. Let's say we have a business that was affected by the winter storm. We're talking about hurricane season being upon us. If someone received assistance, be it a FEMA grant or a business loan for the winter event, would they be disqualified from receiving assistance in the case of a hurricane, damage from a hurricane?
Yeah, not at
I
SBA.
think that first question from FEMA's perspective. So after a hurricane hits, if an individual receives grant funding from the federal government through the FEMA Individual Assistance Program, they are required to maintain a national flood insurance program policy moving forward. And if they obtain a policy and maintain a policy, and another event does strike, and they receive an insurance payout for that through that policy, they may be considered by FEMA for any additional unmet needs. But if you receive an individual assistance grant and you fail to maintain an insurance policy with a flood insurance policy moving forward, you will not be qualified for the next event moving forward. So that doesn't necessarily apply here with moving from the winter storm into a hurricane event in the next year or two. But I do want to point out that distinction, and it's very important for individuals who receive FEMA funding to know that requirement.
Yeah, and that kind of thing could also apply at the SBA. If you have received disaster loans from us, there are stipulations with those loans. If you don't comply with those stipulations, such as having insurance, whatever they may be, then yes, that would probably invalidate you for the future. But otherwise, unless you do something like that, there's nothing that would prevent you from having multiple disaster loans. As I mentioned earlier, just the fact that you are now carrying more debt, that may make it more challenging for you to show the ability to repay the loan. So that could affect you, but otherwise, no. And with that, and on that note, we do everything we can to say yes. When a business is applying for a disaster loan, we realize that the disaster has hurt you, you need some help. If we can say yes, we're going to say yes. So we may come back to you 5 times asking for information. Just do it. Get through it, because that's us trying to say yes. If you're Carol and you have perfect credit and everything's great, you got lots of money flowing in, the first time you apply, we're probably going to say yes. But if you have maybe a couple of hiccups in the background, or there's some missing documentation, or somebody has compromised your credit by stealing your identity, that's going to complicate things. Doesn't mean we're going to say no. That means it will be more challenging to say yes. So when SBA comes back to you and says, hey, we need a tax transcript, we need this thing or that thing, do it fast as you can, do it as complete as you can. And I'm going to harp on this again. Make sure you have somebody at SBDC, SCORE, or Women's Business Center that you can call on, because if this happens to you, they can help you. They've been there, they've done this, they can help you step through it, they can help you get everything together to help the SBA say yes.
Well, we like the answer yes.
Yeah, everybody does.
I don't think there's not one person that doesn't like the word yes when it's something that they need or want. So that's good to hear. So I have one last question about disaster, and then we'll go into some parting words from both of you.
Sure.
So Ben, if you could help us with this. We know President Biden declared our area for the winter storm as a disaster area, and when we go through hurricane season, those things tend to happen regularly. So could you explain, as far as a disaster declaration, what does that really mean for residents in this area and business owners?
Yes, Carol, absolutely. So at the beginning of my presentation, I mentioned that President Biden declared a federal disaster for the Texas winter weather event. And there are various programs that can be turned on in a federal disaster. For this event, 126 counties across Texas have been activated or designated for individual assistance, which is the program that I've been discussing throughout this call. There are other programs that FEMA provides that are geared towards to government entities. We provide public assistance in terms of infrastructure repair projects. We provide mitigation assistance following a disaster. But for Harris County in this disaster, what it means is that from the beginning of the incident period, residents were eligible or were able to apply for FEMA individual assistance. There are other counties across the state that are currently attempting to apply for designations through the individual assistance program, and they're using a software that the state of Texas and the Texas Division of Emergency Management has put together that allows for individuals to self-report damages to their home. Due to the COVID-19 environment, this has become a very useful tool for individuals to help their county governments determine and quantify the amount of damages that they have without having too many federal or state employees out in the field and in individuals' homes. So if you have any additional questions on that, Carol, I'm happy to follow up.
Okay, thank you. If we do have any questions from our membership, I'll definitely let you all know. And so as we wrap up, just want to get some closing words of advice, or anything that you would like to make sure that our participants and our members hear about with regard to the winter storm incident and in preparation for hurricane season or any other natural disaster that just happens upon us. So I'll start with you, Tim.
Sure, and I see a couple of questions in the chat box. If we don't get them all answered today, you can just send them to houston@sba.gov. So that's not my email address, that's for the whole office, but I have people checking that all the time, and they will get it answered, or they'll send it to me, or we'll take care of you. But anything your small business needs, disaster is one thing, but if you need a social media plan, if you want to put together a plan to attract more customers, if you're thinking about exporting, whatever it might be, that's what we're here for. We help Americans start and grow their small businesses. If we can't help you, then we can connect you with someone that can. So for the time being, as I mentioned, we're all sitting at home or somewhere else working on laptops that have phones built into them. So we're not in the office, you can't come see us, but you can sure email us, and that's the very best way. You email us and we're going to get you an answer for whatever your situation is, or we're going to try very hard. Sometimes with the disaster loans right now with the pandemic, we are receiving 1,000 to 10,000 times as many calls and requests and loan applications as we normally do. And we haven't hired 10,000 times as many people. So it might take a little bit of time. I know it's frustrating, but we'll help you get through it. But email us. We're going to help you any way that we can.
Well, Tim, on that note, let me ask this one question that I see in the chat, because I think it's pretty important, especially as it comes to scams around loans. So a listener asked, I received an SBA loan last year, but got an email from an attorney requesting corporate documents, meetings, etc. Should I respond to this?
If it came from @sba.gov, yes, and that's common. So when you get an economic injury disaster loan, it depends on your form of organization. But if you are a corporation or LLC or something like that, then we are going to ask you to get everyone involved in your company to certify that they realize you're incurring new debt and that they accept that debt. That's probably what that is. It's probably asking for a board meeting and for minutes of the board meeting that shows each person said yes, and then the principal officer has to sign that. That's probably what it is. And if it is, that is correct. So what we do with the disaster loans is we go on faith. You say, I promise, I'm the president of the business, I promise we're going to pay it back. So we go ahead and we disperse the funds to you, and then we give you 6 months to make sure you get board approval. Ordinarily, we would require board approval first, but we do that because it's a disaster and we're trusting that you're going to get it done. So that's probably what that is. I've seen several of those documents. If you're ever in question, you just forward that document to houston@sba.gov. We will get you an answer. Or if it's the same kind of email that I see a lot of, it has the name of the attorney and their phone number, and it's probably an area code 202 for Washington, D.C. Give them a call. And the odds are their voicemail is going to be full, but you can try to give them a call or email them and just to confirm. But in short, if their email address ends in sba.gov, that should be one of our folks, and you should be fine.
Okay, thank you so much, Tim. I thought that was very important to get that information out because there are scams going on out there.
Yes.
If we had more time, we could talk about, how to avoid those. But hopefully, at the SBA and FEMA, there are email addresses that people can submit information to and kind of get those types of things vetted. So on that note, Ben, are there any closing remarks you'd like to make?
Yes, Carol, thank you. And I will send out to you those email addresses that we work with local.
It's going to come back.
Addresses that we work with local law and us, so we can work closely with our constituents to ensure that scams are addressed. I did want to plug a very useful tool for disaster preparedness, which is the FEMA app. It's available for both Apple and Android users. And it allows you to come up with a disaster response plan for you and your family. It has tips for particular documents that you need to safeguard in the event of an emergency. You can set a location, home away from home, where you will meet your loved ones in case of cell phone or internet disruption. And it can also point you into pertinent information for your flood policy needs, and that, which is a great transition for me to plug insurance, because as we know in Houston, hurricanes and tropical storms are becoming a once-a-year event, and we really need to ensure that our populace are properly insured, because FEMA is here to help as much as we possibly can, but we are not a substitute for insurance. And we work in tandem with the National Flood Insurance Program and the USSBA and our partners at the state to ensure that no disaster survivor is left behind. But simply put, the payouts from an insurance proceed, a private insurance company, are going to be much larger than those provided by the FEMA Individual Assistance Program. So we really, really encourage you to use all the resources available to your disposal and prepare for the next hurricane season.
Okay, thank you for that, Ben. And I heard the Congresswoman say something about businesses and FEMA. So if you could shoot that information to us, then we can get that out to our members as well. So thank you both, Ben Akers. Thank you, Tim Jeffcoat.
You're welcome.
You all have given us some valuable information today. And thank you to Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee for always supporting the chamber, for partnering with us to bring this event to our members and to the community today. We want to thank you all for attending. We always appreciate our members and community supporters. Please, if you have not joined the chamber, please consider becoming a member. Visit our website at ghbcc.com/membership to join today. Want to make you aware of an event that's coming up that you won't want to miss. It's the start of our masterclass series. Our first event is going to be March 31st. So please be on the lookout for information there, where we will hear from our top business owners in the Houston area about how they got to where they got. You're going to hear some very, very interesting stories, maybe pick up some advice, and maybe even get the opportunity to connect and network and create additional business opportunities for yourself. So be sure to stay tuned for that. So again, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Ben. Thank you to everyone for joining our special edition of Chamber Chat today. And please look for some more events as we go forward. All right, everyone, have a great day, and stay tuned to all of our social media handles for future events and everything that goes on through the chamber. Have a great day.